For this project, we are going to need a styrofoam cone. You can use any size for this. They come in a couple of different sizes at the craft store. So pick what size you want, or I'm going to do a couple different sizes to make a little forest. And then you'll need fabric. So just some yardage. You'll need probably about a half yard or a yard, depending on how big your tree is. You'll need a rotary cutter and then the biggest ruler you have. Mine has some paint on it, but ignore that. So this is a 24-inch by 12-inch, and it's easier to use a really long ruler when you're cutting out bias strips so that you can get more length all at once. But if you have just a 18 by 3, that'll work too. So the first thing we need is we need to cut out bias strips of fabric. So bias is the grain along the 45-degree angle. And when you cut out fabric on the bias, it is a little bit less likely to fray, and also it ruffles really well. So that's why we're doing that. So most cutting mats have some lines here to help you. Bias is on the 45-degree angle. So this mat has a 30, a 45, and a 60, but I'm going to use the 45. So what you can do is just line up your fabric, find that 45, it's the one in the middle, and then put your ruler on it. You're just going to line up your ruler with that line. If you can see the other end of the line, then that is helpful too, but since my fabric's too big, I'm just going to make sure it's really straight against the 45-degree angle line here. And then just kind of check to make sure I'm on the right track right here so you can see the end of the line. And then I'm going to go ahead and start cutting this. And now, since my mat isn't big enough, I'm going to scoot this up. And now that I have that 45-degree angle, I can just follow along that angle with my ruler. To finish that cut. And then that is the angle I need. So from there I can make this easier by folding it in half. Just remember which side you're going to cut. And then I'm going to cut these into 1.5-inch strips. So I'll just leave this cut edge, that's my angle, my 45-degree angle. Put my ruler back over it. And then, actually I think I'm going to do 1 3/4-inch strips. And then just slice the fabric like that. And you can keep slicing since that angle is still 45 degrees even after we cut. Just keep cutting strips. And then you can do the same using the leftover yardage over here as well. So the number of strips you're going to need is going to vary depending on your cone size. Before we gather the fabric, we're going to cut off the angle here at the edges of the strips. And if you have any selvage edge that you want to cut off, go ahead and do that now. So we're just cutting that perpendicular to the strip so that it will be straight. And then I'm going to do that on this side too. And now we're going to gather along the top, just any long edge. We'll do 2 rows, 1/4-inch and 3/8 inch from the top. A lot of times your threads will already start to gather your fabric as you're sewing the basting stitch. But if you want to add some more gather, we'll just pull those threads on the edges and scooch your fabric in. You just want your ruffles to be even, but you can ruffle as much or as little as you want depending on the look you want for your trees. So I'm going to pull the top threads and just gather that ruffle. And then I'll just gather them all so they're pretty similar in ruffle ratio. And then we can start gluing these on. So grab your glue gun, and you're also going to need just a little scrap of fabric. We're going to start at the top here. Just put some glue at the top of your styrofoam and just a little bit around. And then we'll put the fabric right on here. Okay, so now we're going to start from the bottom of our cone. We're going to start about 1.25 inches up so that the fabric hangs off the cone a little bit, and just start gluing your ruffles on. So the first ruffle will be pretty straight across, and then we'll start angling up as we go around the cone. So once you hit where you started, we're just going to cover that. Make sure you go all the way across it, over, and then we'll start going up our cone. So we don't want those raw edges to show. And now we can start angling upward. And then when your first ruffle runs out, we'll just grab another one and start by overlapping. Overlap that, and if you want to make it a little bit nicer, you can turn under that raw edge so that you kind of have a loop there. And then keep pinning your ruffle on. So on the second row here, we're just going to make sure that the bottom of our second ruffle covers the top of the first ruffle. And if you want to pin in your ruffle as it dries to keep it there, you can do that too. So I'm just making sure to cover that top edge, that way we won't have to remove those stitches if we don't want to. And then you'll just kind of curve up following the ruffle underneath. So keep doing that till you get to the top. Once you reach the top, we are going to just do a nice around the very tippy top, a nice ruffle around the top. So once you get up there, we're going to kind of focus on how that looks as we glue it on. So we're going to see this part, and then we'll trim that off. I'm going to trim it a little bit further ahead than leaving like 1 inch extra, and then I will fold this under. First put some glue and then fold it under. I'm going to use a pin to help me so I don't burn my fingers, and then put a little bit more glue there, and I'm going to just pin that at the top for it to cool and dry. And then once it's a little bit dry, we're going to take the thread out from that top ruffle, and you'll just want to make sure it's glued before you're cutting the threads. So after you've pulled those threads out, the last step is to trim off any extra threads. We don't need to pull all the threads out of here since a lot of them are covered by ruffles. They should be. But just get all that extra glue gun thread and sewing thread. And then your Christmas tree is all finished.